Hi everybody, got this Snipper that doesn't seem to want to run. I've got fresh fuel in it, got the ignition on, I've got it in the start position and I've primed up the fuel. You can see there's fuel pumping into the carburetor, but it just does not want to start. I'll give you an example. So I thought what we'd do is we'd go through a bit of a diagnosis as to what the problem is. I think what we might do to start with, we might check if it's got spark or not. So to do that, I'm going to take the spark plug out and I'm going to test it. Let's just remove this cover here so that we can actually get a good earth for that spark plug so that we can actually see if we're getting any spark or not. See that? So it definitely got spark there. Obviously it's a fuel problem. So why don't we just try and put some fuel straight down the cylinder and see if it'll actually fire. So let's just stick a bit of two-stroke straight in. See it. So clearly the problem is it just doesn't want to idle, so I'm going to guess there's a jet blocked in the carburetor or something similar. You know, just looking at this whole thing appears loose. I just wonder if that's the actual real problem here. Clearly I don't have the right size Allen keys. I've got to go and get the right size Allen key in order to tighten that bolt onto the bottom of that crank. I'm back here looking at this McCulloch Snipper again, and I just wanted to show you again what I think the real problem is with this Snipper. If you can see closely in here, you can see how the head has come loose. Now I'm going to assume that the piston's moving up and down in here, and there's a little crank down in this section. Interestingly enough, whilst you saw that I could get it running the other day, it doesn't seem to run properly, and I'm just wondering if there's some sort of back pressure under there. Regardless, long term I've got to get this tightened up, because that is simply not going to last with that wobbling around there like that. I think what I might do to start with is actually try to get all of this plastic off, get this plastic out of the way, and then see if we can actually tighten up the bolts that come down into the lower half of that engine. Before we lose these screws, you can see they're all different sizes. Let's just screw them back in temporarily. As you can see, as I took those out, all of these screws are different sizes. So I've just popped those 4 screws back in. There were longer ones on the top than the bottom ones are shorter. I've just popped those 4 screws back in there, so I know exactly where the screws go to put this back together. Certainly going to be easier now that I've got that whole hand throttle disassembled. Quite easy. We can see the throttle just slots back in there, and that connector there slots back in there. In fact, this little mechanism here, when I put it back together, I might take that out completely, because all that is safety, and it's a bit annoying. As you can see, you don't really need that, it's just a safety. You've got to push that down before you can pull the throttle. Normally it's up the other way, of course. So I might just take that out completely when I put it back together. I'll see what it feels like. Put that to one side. know, I've taken all of these screws out, but I still can't seem to get this plastic off the front here. You know, perhaps the easiest way to get to that other bolt that holds the head down is actually going to just be a drill a hole straight through this plastic and have a permanent hole through that plastic up there as an access point to that bolt to tighten the head back down to the rest of the engine. I know I've disassembled a lot, but I just can't see how I'm going to get the rest of this plastic off to get to that hole in there. Just bring it in so you can see. The hole right in there, right, which is like this one here, which we've got to get one of these hex screws down to tighten that head onto that shaft. So after thinking about it, I'm just going to drill a hole straight through this plastic cover so I can get to that. Bit of a waste of time taking everything apart so far, but I suppose, you know, you try to do things properly, but at the end of the day, if you can't get it apart, we make a plan. So that has certainly tightened that head up now onto that bottom section. So the real question now will be whether it actually runs. As I talked about before, This here is only a feature to stop the throttle going down. So I'm going to see if I can take that off, because I don't really care about that. Just pull that off and put that to one side. If we have to, for some reason, put that back on. I've taken that safety feature off. If for some reason it has to be there, I will put it back on later. See the throttle's working nicely. Alright, let's put a head on it and see if it'll let start. Switched on. Primed with plenty of fuel in the start position. Alright, so as you can see, that whip snipper actually wants to start now. You saw in the beginning of the video that I could not get it to run at all without putting a little bit of two-stroke down the spark plug. So clearly the problem with this whippersnipper was the fact that that head was actually loose. I'll see if I can get this to fire again, and I'm assuming it will. We'll put it all back together. As you have seen, I managed to repair my McCulloch whippersnipper
where the problem ended up being that the bolts which secured the head to the engine had come loose over the years. If I were to do this again, I would just drill a hole in the front plastic cover to get to the front head bolt from the beginning, which would save a lot of time. The main reason that I attempted this repair is that this model of McCulloch whippersnipper had a number of optional attachments which I have and use regularly, such as the hedge trimmer and the lawn edger. If you thought this video was useful to you, I would really appreciate your feedback, so please feel free to like it below, leave a comment and share it.